at Bristol Motor Speedway over the last few seasons and believes his dirt racing background has helped make that a reality. The Hendrick Motorsports pilot explained why former dirt racers like himself are more proficient in general on the high-banked half-mile.
I think it's just that we have a feel for the pace, and the pace being really fast, quick decisions, moving around, navigating traffic, all of that. And then too, I think because the groove does change, although it might be 6 inches here or there or a foot here or there, it changes. And that's all something I think makes me good there.
I'm Susie Armstrong. This is NASCAR Today on the Motor Racing Network.
You're listening to 99.3 FM, presented by St. Barnabas, in addition to 1230 WBVP Beaver Falls. It's now time for the best of Beaver County. For the next 30 minutes, you're going to learn about unique and interesting people in Beaver County. You can also watch live on Facebook at WBVP-WMVA. The best of Beaver County is brought to you by St. Barnabas. Here is your host, Frank Sparks.
Hey, good morning and welcome to the best of Beaver County for this week. This week we're going to be talking about a really cool place that's on Neville Island, and it's very interesting. And a lot of the music you hear locally and you hear here on Beaver County Radio actually comes from the Vault Recording Studio. And the best of Beaver County this week is none other than Bob McCutcheon, who is the owner of the Vault. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning. How are you?
Good to see you again. Joining us also in studio, Scott's going to hang out with us for this half hour and talk a little bit. Scott and I both have made the track down to the Vault, and I still think that we should go in that, I can't remember what the room's called that has all the different speakers in it, but I think we still need to go in there and watch the Star Wars trilogy and have a watch party so we can hear everything going zinging by you. Yeah,
and
so
Dolby Atmos, right?
Yeah. So, well, Bob, tell us a little bit about yourself first, and then we'll get into talking about the Vault.
Sure. Well, it's it's an interesting story. I started recording back in the 80s in my first recording studio, working my way through college. Actually, I'm a Robert Morris alum, was going to business school at the time, and always, I was a guitar player in bands, writing, recording, and sort of doing my own thing, and stumbled into recording. It started off as a friend and then a friend's friend. The next thing you know, I'm kind of running a small independent studio. Got sidetracked in a career in finance for nearly 30 years, but always continued to play, continued to record. When my kids started expressing interest in music, we decided to find the place on Neville Island. It's the old PNC Bank building on Neville Island, and we built the studio.
That's a very unique place.
Yeah, it's. Churches and banks make great studios.
There's a reason you call it the Vault.
Yeah, the bank vault is in the basement. It's literally now a reverb chamber.
I was going to say, yeah, you guys use that for something. Tell us a little bit about how you use that for a reverb chamber.
Yeah, old school recording. Before there were digital reverbs, you found, chambers, whether it was a bank vault, a stairwell, a bathroom, whatever the studio and the building had. That was the echo chamber that you used to record, that reverb and those echoes. And so I had a vault. I had to do something with it.
That's so cool. Well, tell us a little bit about the Vault and, exactly what type of recording studios you guys have. And then we're going to dig in a little bit because, even your board, if I'm not mistaken, is somebody famous's board that you got. Yeah. So let's dig into all this.
Yeah, there's some interesting, historical pieces with some real mojo. But yeah, the original Studio A was the one that we built. We actually just celebrated our 10 years. It opened in 2016. And originally that was just me. It was a personal project studio. I wasn't running it commercially. I built it for myself. And then in 2018, when Jimmy Hoyson joined us, Jimmy's a Pittsburgh native, 32 years in LA, 6-time Grammy winner. He's done a crazy list of artists when he was out in LA. And that's when we put in the Neve console, which was a 1977 vintage Neve, came out of Nashville originally, Pete Drake's studio, worked with George Harrison, Ringo Starr.
They actually used that board. George Harrison
used that board. Yes.
That is awesome.
And then, interestingly enough, he sold it actually relatively soon. He sold it to Scott Litt, Scott had it out in Studio 5 in Ocean Way in LA, and Scott did REM, The Replacements. He mixed, actually the band, Dave Grohl sat at that desk, and Nirvana mixed their MTV Unplugged sessions on that desk.
Wow.
Red Hot Chili Peppers recorded and mixed on that desk. And the one my son loves is the original Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man soundtrack was mixed on that desk as well.
That's crazy. Just when we were sitting down there and you were talking about the different people whose music and people that have mixed on that board and stuff like that, I'm just sitting there thinking, look at and Scott was the same way. Look at the history of what that board's been through, and it's sitting here in Neville Island.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Yeah, and it just kept accumulating from there. So that was 2018 when Jimmy joined. A year later, Dave Hillis walks in. Dave had moved to Pittsburgh. I was telling Scott, a lot of these folks you'll hear a repeating theme. Moved to Pittsburgh, family connections, weren't maybe originally from Pittsburgh. But Dave had moved to Pittsburgh and was looking for a place to work. He saw that we had the Neve. Dave came out of London Bridge Studios in Seattle, so he was the engineer, recorded Pearl Jam 10, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, Temple of the Dog. All of that grunge that came out of London Bridge Studios in the 90s. And Dave says, well, I have that 2-inch tape machine sitting in my garage.
Stop it. Yeah, really?
And I had just the corner for it. So then Dave joins us, and now I've got, that's got its own mojo as well, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, is that the one that's sitting like off to the left of the couch or whatever?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's that 2-inch machine.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's pretty cool.
So there's, just a lot of history made on that board as well, or on that tape machine.
It's not a museum. Like Pittsburgh bands, Beaver County bands can go into your studio, and that equipment is used to make their music.
Daily, right. Yeah.
Well, tell us about some of the famous ones you've had in already. I know you had a actor in there when they were doing, what was it, Kings and Queens or something like that?
Oh,
to come in and did
Jeremy
some commercials.
Renner was in.
Yeah, did some commercials.
So it was interesting. Actually, it kind of follows on the timeline. So Rob Diener joined us in 2020. Rob's a composer, producer, arranger. I mean, he multi-instrumentalist, really talented guy, but has spent 20-some years in the post-production ad TV space, sort of by day while he's making music with artists, on the side. And so we did a lot of post-production work. And Jeremy Renner had come in to do a Silk Milk commercial. It was a Super Bowl commercial, right? And a couple of other, I think there was another commercial he did, but it was all voiceover work while he's in town working on Mayor of Kingstown. So, and that's, not uncommon to have talent come in when they're working in the city on a film or something else. So,
that's pretty cool. Tell us some of the names you've had in the vault.
Probably the biggest name who was didn't actually record, but it was actually with us twice for different events, was Smokey Robinson. So Smokey has Pittsburgh connections. His wife is originally from Pittsburgh. They still have a house here, to the best of my knowledge. So he's usually in town a few times a year. And we've done some fundraising events at the studio for our foundation that he's been kind enough to join us for. Gabby Barrett's been in. So, more recently, I'd say the names that would be familiar are, the local talent that you're hearing, on the station. Ashley Marina, we were just talking about, she and her family have been in a couple of times for different projects, but, we always love following her recently on The Voice. And,
she's going somewhere. She's going to be a household name.
Just super talented, yeah. So it's always fun to have, local folks like that, and we love our hometown heroes too, right?
Chris Jameson from The Voice, he also recorded some work at your studio as well.
Yeah, so Chris and I just recently caught up again. So Chris was actually the first artist that I signed on the label. So
that's cool.
So when we started our record label in 2017, he was the first artist that we signed, and we have done a lot of work with him over the years. He actually contributed to a project that my son had done that was both an album release and a documentary film that Chris participated in. So yeah, Chris is another
That's pretty cool
favorite of ours.
One of our favorites that we had on when we first started with our format previously, Scott and I always liked Giants Causeway. We loved that. We always loved it.
Yeah. The funk rock. It's those guys have been fantastic. And they actually started off as Slam Band and Sam, if you remember.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I think you've played music from both names, right? Even
absolutely.
though they were essentially the same lineup with a change in vocalists, but really good guys, funk rock band. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun to work with them.
We've been buzzing about a band we played that's also currently recording at the Vaults, Fife.
Yes.
Young guys, Chippewa, Blackhawk area, and they look like rock stars. They just did a show at Jurgles Rhythm Grill, and I heard from someone who was there. He said, sometimes it's the opening act, people sort of kind of pay attention, but people were packed in front of the stage, and they were rocking out with this band they were discovering for the first time. And what's it like working with those young guys?
They're a lot of fun to work with. Actually, I was just trading notes with them yesterday. We're still in the middle of that album project. We've been dropping singles. I think they have 3 singles done. I just sent a 4th one to them. I think we've got 7 or 8. So they'll end up dropping an album when it's all said and done. But yeah, they've been a lot of fun to work with. Just a breath of fresh air because they're young guys. Yeah. They've got the energy. They've got the look. Yeah, it's good stuff.
The lead singer was sitting where you're sitting a couple weeks ago, and I just got the sense that that enthusiasm made me enthusiastic. Definitely going to root for those guys.
Yeah, it reminds me of my days back then. Yeah, the enthusiasm is really contagious.
What band were you in? Would it be a name anyone would
nobody
remember?
You've ever heard of.
No.
Now, another young lady we had in here a couple weeks ago, Torrance Sebastian.
Yeah, Torrance is fantastic.
Yeah, she did a very nice job, and I think she has a good future ahead of her as well.
Yeah, so she's another one that's on the label. Mm-hmm. We've released 3 singles so far. We'll have an EP coming out, before the end of this year. And again, just an amazing talent, local artist who came she went to Youngstown State, came back to Pittsburgh. She's been working with Rob's been producing her project. Okay. And yeah, it's really good music that it's been well received. I think it's very, it's easy to connect with her music. I think there's a lot of great storytelling and emotion in what she does. And the production is fantastic. So yeah, we're really thrilled with that.
How do you decide who you're going to, like, if you want to sign somebody or if their music, once they submit it to you, if it's a yay or an A?
Yeah, that's a loaded question.
That's what I get paid for, Bob.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's been a little bit of an evolution.
Okay.
In the early, it's interesting. When I signed Chris, just to give you how quickly the business changes, right? When I signed Chris to the label, it was still under a download model.
Okay.
You remember 99-cent downloads?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So by the time we released his first record, it was essentially streaming only. So the finances of the whole project were blown up.
Right.
So we've really thought differently about what we're doing with the label. It's less production deals and more distribution promotion.
Gotcha.
But obviously I have the asset of the studio. So there are times when, like in the case of Torrance, she was already working with Rob. That was already in process. So it was more, what can we do on the back end of this project to support her from a distribution and a promotion perspective, because Rob had already been doing the production. And that often happens when we're in the middle of something.
So when you're making your decision, is it important for you if a young singer for a band, if they're good at promoting themselves? Is that a big part of the equation?
It really is. And often it's a choice for the artists as well. We could go into a long sort of educational process on the pros and the cons of a record label and what they do for local artists these days. Because it's very different than the days of the A&R executives who discover new talent and then invest in artist development, promotion. That model just doesn't really exist like it used to. And it's because of digital, right? Because artists can make music on a laptop, they can distribute it with the push of a button, they can promote themselves on social media. So a lot of what a quote-unquote label used to do for an artist, those artists can do for themselves. So often what you find now is labels kind of jump in after they've already developed themselves, have the numbers. A&R now is looking at, the Spotify numbers and the Instagram numbers and seeing if they've already developed themselves to a point of, wanting to get in on the action, basically. So, so it's a little bit of a different world today than it was even 5 or 10 years ago.
So how do the artists basically, I guess, make money off of it when it's all said and done? Because with streaming, you basically pay one amount. And I know, like, being in radio, we pay certain fees. Right. But is that solely how the artists get paid at this point?
No, actually, it's probably the opposite. I would say, I always try to caution artists that, digital music today is very much like social media content, right? And it's table stakes, right? If you want to be an artist and you want to perform and you want to make a living doing this, you need to have your music out there for the world to hear. But that's more like content for social media. The revenue streams are still in physical, right? Vinyl, CDs, so selling physical products still has profit margin, is still profitable for the artists. And that means playing live, right? So you still have to get out and play live, gig, sell merch, sell physical product, and recognize that not that you can't make money in digital, but the numbers needed to make real money are pretty sizable before you start to see any real dollars.
Yeah, I know, like somebody for like us, a lot of our streamings, like when we pay a royalty to somebody, it's like 1/10 of a penny per person listening to the song. So if you have 10 people listening to the song, that person gets 1 cent as a royalty, and that's whether it's the writer, whether it's the label, or whether it's the artist.
Yeah, it's 1 cent split how many ways?
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's that's why I asked that, because I'm like, well, you can't make any money off of digital content nowadays. It's not like how record sales and things used to be back in the day. Yeah. So
and as a label, I always tell the artist, I do this candidly because a big part of why I built the studio, why I've established the label, the foundation, everything else. It's my post-retirement joy, right? I had a long career in finance, and this is my post-retirement fund, right? So the reason I do what I do is because I believe in the local scene and the artists that are here, and I want to do my part to try to support them, right? So I'm not doing it because I'm profit-oriented, but they're lottery tickets. Every one of these is a lottery ticket. And so, maybe one of those will hit, and that would be great, but that's not really the reason I'm doing it.
We're visiting this morning with Bob McCutcheon. He's the owner of the Vault Recording Studio. It is down on Neville Island. And we're going to take a very short break, and we'll come back with more right after this here on The Best of Beaver County.
Honey, I found the perfect place for my parents and us.
Where?
St. Barnabas. For us, the Woodlands Carriage Home Community. And for my parents, condominium-style living at the Village. My folks will love the Village. There's an indoor mall with shops, restaurants, and more. And we can relax, knowing they're safe and secure.
That's what I plan to do when we move to St. Barnabas. Relax.
Call 724-444-5568 or visit stbarnabascommunities.com.
Are you a fan of the historic high school sports history that we have in Beaver County? Beaver County Radio and the Fry Transportation Group are proud to introduce Way Back When. Every Sunday night at 8 p.m., Beaver County Radio will rebroadcast a classic high school game in its entirety. You'll hear the call of famous Beaver County Radio sports broadcasters from the past and present as they take you way back when. Tune in this Sunday, April 12th at 8 p.m. as we go way back to March 28th, 2008 and the Boys Quigley Classic. For many years, this all-star game traditionally closed the book on the high school basketball season. Way Back When is presented by the Fry Transportation Group and brought to you by Falcone's Move Township Ford, The Hangar, and Beaver County Radio.
We're back on the Best of Beaver County. Our guest this week is Bob McCutcheon. He is from the Vault Recording Studio on Neville Island. Also joining us in studio is Scott Tatey. As everybody knows, Scott from the Beaver County Radio Morning Show and many years in the entertainment field. So Scott's the perfect person to help guide me along through this and talk about some of the different the groups and stuff that have recorded there. So as a young artist, if I'm into it and I want to start getting into it, we'll use somebody like Torrance Sebastian. Yep. I come to you, you decide you want to be a part of me. Take us through the process.
Sure. It's it really varies by sort of artist and project. And everybody's in a different stage in their own development musically, right? I mean, we've got some very young, new artists that have written some lyrics, some melodies, maybe don't even play an instrument and need full production and songwriting behind them. to, bands that have fully written, arranged, and have a very strong sense of production so that when they come in, they're more traditional recording projects, right? Recording, mix, master, and everything in between. So it's very much customized to what's the artist, what capabilities do they have? What do we need to do to supplement them? Sometimes it's even bringing session musicians in. Or, in the case of some of the pop music, it can be a lot of, digital production where we're doing work, on the computer and creating tracks that way.
So the classic story, a young person sitting on their bed at night with their guitar, strumming, writing lyrics, if they come to the vault, you'd be able to supply them with musicians and a drummer, a bass player, and that kind of...
Yeah, we do that all the time. I probably have right now a half a dozen artists that are exactly in that sort of, that mode of creation. I'll get, a young lady who comes in and says, I wrote this on my ukulele. Can you turn it into a pop song? And the answer is yes.
Right.
I mean, it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of, vision and, tell me what's in your head so that I can try to translate that. But yeah, I mean, it really, we're pretty flexible in terms of how we're able to start the process.
So why in some of the, I noticed in the studio, piano's in a separate room. Why are some of the instruments in separate rooms compared to where the artist is recording?
Yeah, a lot of it is about isolation. When I built the studio to be a more traditional Nashville, LA, live tracking studio, and my personal philosophy is I like to have full bands track live, together, interacting with one another the way music was intended, in my humble opinion, right? And so when you're tracking a full band and they're playing live, you want to have isolation and separation of the different sounds from the microphones so that we have a little bit more control over that in post-production. So a lot of things are separated just, for purposes of being able to control the different sounds and tones.
But they can see each other. There's just a glass partition or something.
Yeah, there's multiple rooms with glass in between. And nowadays, we have flat panel TVs that are, the digital version of Windows. Yeah. And so we have other rooms that, there isn't a window, but there's a flat panel and it's equally effective. So.
Yeah, I thought that was cool when you saw, you put the artist in one room and somebody else in the other room. And it was kind of neat the way, and then to see it all come together.
Yeah, we do live big band jazz sessions where we'll have 15 horns on a different floor altogether.
Okay.
But everybody can see one another on flat panels, and the rhythm section's upstairs and the horns are downstairs, but we're tracking, 20-some people live, right?
One of the artists recording in there, you're going to like this, Frank, the son of Carla Bianco, the Broadway star from Center Township, now Moon High School. And you were telling me a bit about him.
Yeah, so Luca's in a band called Soul Dive that is a young, local, they're all high school students, really talented, great songs. They've been in, over the last couple of months, finishing an album with Rob and actually Greg Gordon, who's another one who's joined the team here. So Greg is, long history of Motown, New York, L.A., currently does all the Greta Van Fleet and Mirador work, but he's got his own list of major names. So he's working with us now, lives in Sewickley. I told Scott, I said, all the Greta Van Fleet stuff has been mixed in Sewickley and nobody's known it. But,
wow, that's awesome.
So,
I would have thought it was Michigan or Detroit or something.
Yeah, no. So Greg has been here, and so he's been engineering, and Rob's been helping with production, and that project is nearing completion as well. Super talented. Definitely keep your eyes open for them.
Soul Dive.
Soul Dive. Yeah.
Okay.
One thing we want to talk about in the last few minutes that we have is we want to talk about the Rhythm 19 Fund that's in honor of your son Ryan.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
So my oldest son Ryan had passed in an automobile accident back in 2017. He was a percussionist, drumline instructor. Was actually working with the local marching band at a festival on his way home to Robert Morris. He was a student at Robert Morris at the time and had passed in an automobile accident. We set up a foundation in his memory that's all music oriented, right? So it's music education, it's working with youth. We're working with, over 40 different, schools and organizations in the area between scholarships and funding programs. We do a lot of work at the studio itself. So we have a lot of school programs come through the studio. We do a music makers camp for a full week in the summer. And the foundation has been really instrumental in us being able to work with those young students and support music in our school program. So we've granted over $100,000 in grants since its origination. We've raised another $250,000 yet to be distributed, and it continues to grow. And it's a big part of what we do. The studio and the foundation are work hand in hand. To me, a lot of the work that I do with students and educationally based, it's all tied in, right? They're not really separated in my mind.
Music Makers Camp. Well, what does that involve?
Yeah, so it's a 5-day camp, 8th through 12th graders, that really is how to write a song, record a song, mix a song, distribute a song, even a little bit of the music business on the back end, and they do it in 5 days. So they form bands with complete strangers. And write a song and record it, and then basically play it for their families at the end of the camp, and they get it all done in 5 days. And they get their hands on the Neve, and they actually work on the gear themselves. So
that's wild.
Yeah.
Now, do you have a website or Facebook page, or how do people keep tabs of what's happening at the Vault?
Yeah. So www.thevaultrecording.com. You can find us on the internet, and we have Instagram and Facebook, and it's the Vault Recording. It's pretty easy to find us. But our stuff is all over the.
Are you looking for new artists?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always looking for new artists. Mm-hmm. I get excited for the new talent to walk in the door and what comes next, and so I'm always looking for new faces. Yeah.
What about this new craze that's out there with the vinyl coming back? Has that been huge?
Yeah, it's It's interesting because it's not going to be the same numbers that we remember when we were growing up, right? But we are breaking records now, pun intended, I guess. Right. with vinyl distribution now that we haven't seen in a long time, and I attribute it to a couple of things. I do think that the younger generation is coming around to recognizing that there is value to being able to what I call actively listen to music, to have that experiential where you can sit and open and read the liner notes and listen to a record, side A, side B, flip it, sitting on the floor in your bedroom, right?
Study the artwork. What's on this cover? Is there a little hidden message in that corner there?
And so I think, digital has become a very passive listening environment. And I think the generation now is starting to recognize that there is value in that, and they're searching for that kind of experience. And so I do see a resurgence in vinyl. I think the other reason is because, getting back to my earlier point, there's no money in digital from an artist perspective, right? And so, if you can press vinyl, if you can make some CDs.
Vinyl's cool, though.
Yeah, and we're pressing vinyl in Pittsburgh now.
Oh, wow.
Right. So that's exciting to be able to have a vinyl press right here in Pittsburgh. So
I've always been a fan of the red records when they're red.
Yeah.
For some reason, I don't know why, I've always been a fan of that.
Worth money.
Yeah. So if you want to hear some of Bob's artists, you can always tune in Backyard Beaver County on Beaver County Radio every Friday from 8 to 10. Scott plays a lot of the artists that are actually recording at the Vault. And we have to thank you for being one of the sponsors of that show as well, because that's an awesome show that just couldn't happen without people like yourself.
No, it's our pleasure.
Well, one more time, tell everybody about the Vault and how they can get a hold of you if they would like to possibly come down, check it out, and maybe talk with you and see if maybe you guys could get something going.
Yeah, we could always send me an email at bob@thevaultrecording.com, and you can look us up on thevaultrecording.com on the internet or Instagram or Facebook.
All right. So, what's your favorite artist that has been on that Neve board so far? That was ever recorded on there? Come on, you got history there. You got to tell us who was favorite. Who was your favorite one?
So I'd have to say probably Nirvana, because Dave Grohl was actually my inspiration for building the studio.
Interesting.
Yeah. If you see the documentary Sound City. Mm-hmm. It was actually after watching that documentary that I was inspired to build the studio. I'd always wanted, but just took too long to getting around to doing. So
how did you come upon that board?
It's interesting. Jimmy had contacted somebody from Vintage King Audio And it had just come from Scott. They had made a bunch of changes to that Studio 5 in Ocean Way, and he sold it. Vintage King bought it and refurbished it, put about 800 hours into refurbishing it. And it was weeks after we had made the decision that we were going to look for a Neve. And I thought it would take me 6 to 12 months to find one, and it happened to be sitting on the floor. So
I'm guessing it wasn't Amazon that delivered it.
No, it was not. There's actually, if you go to my website, there's a short documentary film on my website, and part of that actually has the commissioning and the story and everything behind that Neve, which is pretty cool.
What's that website again?
www.thevaultrecording.com.
Go check it out. It's pretty cool.
I think so too.
Yeah. Bob, thanks for coming in today and being the best of Beaver County.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Curtis is around the corner with news. We could sit here and talk about this all day long.
Let's geek out.
Sure. Yeah, right. Yeah, no doubt. So, all right. Join us again next week for the best of Beaver County here on Beaver County Radio.
St. Barnabas thanks you for listening to the Best of Beaver County. If you missed anything or want to watch previous shows, go to our Facebook page at WBVP-W.